weird 2-minute thing. So, all right, we'll get going. Welcome to Double Fries No Slaw. This is a pop-up episode. It's tax day. I think everybody's tax day got delayed though anyway, so I don't even think that's relevant.
I hope so, because we haven't filed them yet.
Oh my gosh, you're such a kid. April 15th, TJ Pittenger alongside Richie Barnes. Appreciate you guys hanging out. And we've got a fun one. We've got a special guest, ESPN Tallahassee's Jeff Cameron, that we'll bring on in just a moment. Want to remind you quickly that Double Fries No Slaw is brought to you by Guthrie's in Tallahassee. You can visit both their locations, 1818 West Tennessee Street and 2550 North Monroe. Make sure you get your box Double Fries No Slaw. But without further ado, we will jump right into this, and we will add the man, Jeff Cameron, on. How's it going, Jeff?
Good. Doing well, TJ. Richie, good to be with you guys. Appreciate you inviting me on. I love the name of this podcast. I have to give you guys credit because that's my time in school, man. That's like 92, 93, 94, going over there, leaving AJ's and rolling into Guthrie's on Tennessee, and always got double fries, no slaw. Yeah, absolutely. Who the hell gets the slaw?
I don't even know why they have it on the. Why do they even have it on the menu? You know,
yeah, nobody does.
We typically ask people. So you're like the best guest because you just come on talking about it because you get it immediately. But I asked Charlie Ward about this. You know, hey man, like, do you go get your gut box double fries no slaw? And he's like, well, TJ, to tell you the truth, I'm a vegan. I was just like, oh, well, great. I just added the greatest player in our program's history, like about chicken. He's like,
was he a vegan? Was he a vegan in 93?
At that point, I just said, like, all right, man, tell me about the Nebraska game.
Like, you're going to punt on all that.
Yeah, let's get out of here before I get in trouble. Yeah. So, but no, we have fun with it. There's enough, like, Unconquered and Spear and everything else that we're like, let's just get wild with things. So FSU spring game just passed. Spring just wrapped up in football. Kind of a unique situation, kind of a cool situation for you. We had Andy Staples on Sunday, and we chatted with him about the other side. But have you ever done anything like this? Like, what did you think when FSU reached out to you and said, like, hey, we want you and Gene to do this and guest coach?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. The way that went down was Mike Norvell called me. Obviously I've had just a professional relationship with Mike Norvell, and I've had him on my show several times, but we weren't in the habit of calling each other's cells and texting or anything. And so I got that call and I didn't know the number because I didn't have his cell. I just always went through proper channels, I suppose. And so I didn't pick up the phone. And then there was a message. I checked it, and it's Coach Norvell, and he was hilarious. I mean, I don't think I'm revealing too much. He's like, Jeff, my name's Mike Norvell. Like and so I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. And we talked a few times, and I'm listening to the message, and he wants me to call him back. He's just like, listen, call me back. I have a question for you, something I want you to be involved in. I thought that'd be cool. So I called him back right away, and he's, and we actually he was really, really affable. We just had a good conversation. And then he said, listen, the reason I called you is I got this idea that I think it will work for you. It's something you might want to do. I don't know, but I don't want you to feel any pressure. He was really nice about it. He said, if you wanted to be a part of this spring game, I'd like you to be kind of a guest, quote unquote, coach, celebrity coach. And is what the way he phrased it, along with Gene Deckeroff. Well, I've known Gene for over 20 years. And I remember when I broke into the business, just the first time I ever interacted with Gene and how nice he was to me. And I thought, man, how cool is this 20 plus years later to do something with Gene like that would be fun. And plus Coach Norvell is basically telling me we have carte blanche to be on the sidelines for the entirety of the scrimmage, the spring game, that we would be going to dinner at his house the night before, that we would go to the coaches' offices in the war room, and we'd go over how they put together game plans, and we'd get a sense of the playbook and the pared down playbook they were going to give us, and how everything worked. And so, of course, I jumped at it. I was like, hell yeah, I'll do it. And I'll be honest, I was not prepared for how open and honest and transparent they were. I mean, once we committed and once they said, yeah, you're going to be part of this, they really opened the doors. I mean, the night before, we had dinner, as I mentioned, at Coach Norvell's house. And I don't say that like some sort of, name drop or anything like that. It's that what they allowed for was amazing. So first of all, you get to his house, and as you can imagine, with a coach making what he does, it's a nice house. And so you get to that house, and you're kind of looking around, and I was trying not to be a fish out of water because the whole team is there, all of his coaches. Of course, his wife and daughter are there, so you want to be respectful. And then every player is there. And I thought this is amazing to get this kind of access in a different setting where you don't have to worry about kind of following the structure of a normal press conference. And part of the problem with a normal press conference is, of course, if you ask a question and then they give you the answer and you have a follow-up, you still have to be very aware that there are 20, maybe 30 other people who want to ask their questions too. So you try not to bogart the whole press conference, and you can't really get into a fluid dialogue, kind of a quid pro quo, a give and take. And in this setting, you could just have a conversation. And I was just talking to players, and I was trying to make it. I wanted them to understand that while I would use that information for context, I certainly wasn't going to roll anybody under the bus and take something that we talked about and stand it by Mike Norvell's pool and use it in a way that could hurt him, And so they opened up, and we were able to have a lot of dialogue. And then I did that with all the coaches as well. So the whole thing could not have been any cooler. I've never been a part of something like that. I've had the good fortune in this career, in my career, to be able to cover things that as a kid I could have never dreamed of, or that I did dream of and never really thought possible. But this was unique because this isn't like covering a national championship game or even a Super Bowl. I've done that. I've done the Stanley Cup. I've done cool things like that. This was really just untethered. Access to everything. It was unbelievable. I just walk in and talk to coaches, ask questions, get answers. You could hear the speed of it all. So it was fantastic.
Yeah, Andy talked about how he's done a lot of things as well. The was it the Big Ten or the SEC? Somebody let him be an official for a game one time, but he said this was
Georgia did. Yeah,
he was like, this was just like one of the most incredible behind the scenes. He's like, I couldn't believe they took us into the meeting rooms and he showed us how he would script plays and what he'd be calling for the first couple. Yeah. And he's like, I just couldn't believe how open he was with everything. And like you said, getting to go hang out with him in that intimate of a setting, because then it's just personal at that point, right? It's not like having him on the show or having him in a press conference or on the sideline. It's just, kind of sit back. There's no microphones around, get to know him.
Yeah. And he really had no problems with answering questions. And then he would follow up with questions for me. I think he did that with all of us. He wanted to get a sense of how much football we knew, not just opinions about who wins and loses games, but kind of how much football do you know? And we talked a little bit about growing up and playing football and when did you fall in love with the sport? And it was cool just to listen to him kind of follow up with his own questions. We had a good time, and it's really smart of him. It shows you how forward thinking he is at a time where coaches shut down all access to everybody all the time and seemingly get frustrated by the simplest of straightforward questions. Mike Norvell has been the opposite so far. You go back to last year, and I think juxtaposing these two things is important for the fan base and for anybody paying attention to Florida State football. This was his intent. I don't mean me coaching on the sidelines with other people, but his intent was to let the media in from day one. And we went to the first 3 practices of spring last year, and we had a lunch over there at the Moore Athletic Center with he and his coaches and players. And he kind of laid out the guidelines for everybody. Hey, listen, you're allowed to come to all these practices. We want you to document. And at that time, he was talking about the climb, and he's like, we want you to document it because we're really proud of the work we do. We're really confident that we're going to get this thing turned around, and we want our kids to be highlighted. He goes, the only thing I ask of you is you don't report injuries before we have a chance to tell families. So if you're out of practice and somebody gets hurt, you can't go with that right away because they need to contact the family that their son broke his leg or something like that. That makes sense. Sure. And then he said, if you've got if you think there's something that you might be controversial or might be something that I would be upset about, just use common sense and call us. I'll call you back and let you know if I think it's okay to do that, to run that story or to have that conversation on the air. He understands he can't really control, what I say on the air every day, but he does also understand that we're all human beings. The more you let somebody in and open somebody up to who you are, the more apt that person is to use, sort of social norms and to try to be, to treat them as human and not just the subject matter. So I feel like he gets it. I mean, he gets it in a big way because that certainly is not going to hurt him having Andy Staples, a national writer there, Andrea Adelson, who's great. It certainly doesn't hurt him locally with all the press that's there to know, like, if I'm not sure what I should do here, I'll just fucking call him. I mean, that's pretty cool to be able to do.
Yeah, we talked. That's exactly what I thought too. Like, he brought on somebody from The Athletic, which is like the newest, hottest thing. ESPN with Andrea, and then like you and Gene tell the story. Like Gene tells the story of Florida State, and you've been that consistent voice in Tallahassee as well, doing the same thing. So yeah, at first I was like, what is, like, the football account just tweeted it out. Like, you were like, what is going on here? But then to see it kind of like come to fruition was really neat. Richie, I'm sorry I cut you off there, but
you're good. So Jeff, TJ mentioned we talked to Andy on Sunday on this podcast, and for a couple bozos like TJ and myself, we play NCAA 14 still because we don't have a recent game, and we think, man, how hard can it be to call plays in a college football game? Like, I'm running up 60 burgers on the computer on Heisman mode. But Andy said that he has a much better appreciation for play callers after doing that for, just a couple series. Did you feel the same as far as like this thing's moving in real time? We got live bullets going on right now.
Yeah, I concur with Andy. I think there's no doubt. I mean, I always had some appreciation for sort of the chaos that I knew went on. I've had opportunities to talk with coaches about what a game day experience is like, but to hear it in your headphones, and it's pretty cool when they come in, the guy that's in charge of making sure that the headsets are working and getting them hooked on and making sure everything's working properly. He came over to us pretty early on. I guess it was about half of the spring game left. And he said, listen, you got to use these two different channels. When you want to talk, the mic has to be down all the way because it'll click and it activates the mic. And you pull it all the way up when you want it off or muted. And he just wants to make sure that you've got a good handle on it. It's not exactly rocket science, but you need to listen because it's going to be going so fast that you can forget one of the steps, switching channels from offense to defense or moving the mic. And the thing is, you can hear every other coach in your headset. So I could hear Coach Norvell, I could hear Kenny Dillingham, I could hear Adam Fuller, and I could hear any other assistant that happened to be wearing a headset. So Ron Dugans or Odell, you can hear any of them. And so I do know that in a game, when you're calling plays, a lot of those guys have to be quiet. They only really pipe up if there's something urgent to let the play caller or to let the coach know, a personnel grouping, something like that. Perhaps there's something being overlooked. They might pipe up. But it's cool when you get ready to call that play and you call that play, then you hear the assistant in the box call down to his coaches on the sideline to get this proper personnel in. The thing I realized was it is so much faster than when you're just watching it from up in the press box or when you're watching it home on the couch watching a game. You feel like you have all the time in the world, but because people are constantly subbing in and out and down and distant situations and leverage is changing so quickly, you have to have a lot of contingency plans. So I think the number one thing is, in your head, let's say you run an outside zone. Now, obviously, coaches will tell you that every play is designed to score if everybody does their part. But conveniently, what's left out there is the defense is also on scholarship, and they're going to try to make a play. And you're not going to win all 11 of your battles in that moment. Somebody's going to get whipped. Somebody's going to make a mistake. Somebody's going to slip. Somebody's going to do something that you really can't anticipate. And so best case scenario, touchdown, most likely, what am I going to get on this outside zone? 4 yards, 5 yards? Okay, what's my call on 2nd and 5? What if we get stoned? What if we get hit at the line of scrimmage and it's 2nd and 11? What's my play call? Because I got to go now because I got to get that personnel grouping in there if I'm subbing, and I got to be ready to ride. So pretty interesting. Like, you start to think 2, 3, 4 plays in advance trying to set things up. And I know everybody talks about a script, and that's fine, but things get off a script quickly. We had a play design. I thought it was the right call. Dillingham said in my ear, it's good call, good call. We got this. Basically, it's quick. It was quick game. We're going out into the flats, and I sound like Jimbo Fisher from back in the day. He used to say everything was out the gate. But we had this set up where if he catches the ball, we go. Everything was blocked up perfectly, and the kid dropped the ball. So now it's 2nd and 10, and here I was about to raise my hands, and you just realize, man, I got to get on the ball here in a hurry. And they were good about getting back to you too, because if you screwed up, or you called a play they thought, I don't like it, they would tell you about it. You'd hear it quickly. Yeah. So it was good. It was good.
And Jeff, you mentioned how it's just an easy click from offense to defense. And I'm glad for your sake that both Andy and Andrea came out and said, yeah, we were listening to their play calls. So if we were coming at them, did you know that was going on at the time? And what were your thoughts?
No. Listen, it was fun, but I'm really glad they admitted it as well, because you feel like an asshole. And
a couple of gators, of course.
Yeah. But, I'll give Andy credit. And I'll give Andrea credit, certainly. We had, all of us, I think we would admit, we had a blast doing this, and we all get along really well. But I'm walking off the field. We shook hands, and, it's only a few series. So once that touchdown happened on the wheel route, the first thing I hear is Mike Norvell in my head saying, oh, that's it. We're going to have to call it. Time's up. I'm like, whoa. No. Because we had just missed a field goal in the previous series. We'd gotten into field goal range. They missed a field goal. Pretty frustrating, by the way. When you watch a missed field goal as a fan, and you're like, God damn it, make a field goal. When you call it and you get somebody set up center cut to make a field goal from 38 and they miss it, you really want to say hateful things to that individual. It's unbelievable how coaches have to show restraint. You're like, are you kidding me? But anyhow, after the game, we shook hands, and Andy leans in. He's like, by the way, I'll let you know a little secret. I heard every one of your plays. Yeah, he was just flipping over when we had the ball to the channel with offense. And, I figured we had to do this on the up and up, but I shouldn't have assumed as much given where they went to school.
So Jeff, on that note, I'm a big fan. I listen to the wildly popular Seminole headlines every week. And one thing you mentioned this week, I don't know if it was on headlines or your show. I listened to both, but there's some colorful language that goes on in that coach's headset.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's not like the Showtime series we had in 2006 when they only played the clean edit cuts. What was your favorite thing that you might have heard in the headset during that time?
That you can repeat.
Yeah. I'll be careful about that. I heard some good stuff. I'll give you two things, and I'll water them down slightly. One, when we dropped the quick pass to the wide side, play side, when he dropped the ball, I said something forgetting that every coach can hear me, and I said MF, And as soon as he dropped it, and I look out onto the field, of course, Norvell's out there, and he's smiling ear to ear, and he looks over at me, and he's smiling, and he goes, I've been known to say that. And so it's kind of funny, he's just saying that on the mic, like, yeah, that kind of frustration is obviously omnipresent in a football game. But I think the thing that I noticed was they coach those kids really hard, so you're going to hear things. I mean, it's a football game. It's these are all big boys. They're used to hearing it. They coach those kids hard, and you hear some things where you're like, ooh, that'll hurt your feelings. But then I noticed that within a few minutes, if they're really hard on a kid, Tate Rodemaker had a tough day, and he was told about it in no uncertain terms. And then later on, of course, there was a meme where you saw Coach Norvell staring death stare through him. So I watched all that happen. I saw that play out, and I could hear that. And so, that was tough. But to a man, those coaches will go over to that guy or any of the guys that they're yelling at in the moment, a few plays later, and they'll slap him on the ass. Go, look, man, you're better than that. I expect more from you. You're capable. Like they build them back up. They don't just let it sit there like, MF for those guys and then walk away. And I think those guys understand, and that's the bond that I saw more than anything else. And it can sound so cliche, and I wouldn't say it if I hadn't witnessed it. But the speech Norvell gave at the end of the game, the one that he gave out at the house, the players' response to those conversations, to that speech, those sentiments, you can tell that there's a level of buy-in that really hasn't been here in a number of years. And that doesn't mean they're going to go win 10 games. It just means they have a chance to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's everybody's concern, right? Like, we all want to win games, right? Like, we want to go 12-0 this year and every year, but it's got to start with the buy-in. Didn't feel like it was there at certain times in the past with different people, and so hoping that it's there now. We'll get to this because that's what a lot of people want to know about. Travis had probably the best spring that he's had. Couldn't have looked better. And then Milton really shined out on the field on Saturday. So you have to name a starter or pick anybody just yet. We won't put that on you. But what are your thoughts on these QBs as we wrap up the spring, head into the summer, and then, how do you kind of see things playing out?
Well, I think two things about that. The first is that I think we have an honest to goodness quarterback competition. And we've already ridden the roller coaster ride here when it was announced. So I took my son to a Bucs game, third game of the year this year, went down to Tampa, and we were watching the Bucs against the Chargers. And there were some guys sitting behind me that were clearly Florida State fans because they were sitting there. I was just eavesdropping it, and they were talking about Florida State, and the other guy was like, "Man, we're gonna suck," and he was going on and on and on, and I was kind of pricking up, listening to it while watching the Bucs game, and then the guy says, "Holy shit!" and he looks down at his phone, and he sees that McKenzie Milton has announced that he's headed to Florida State. So he goes from desperation to elation and almost celebration. Right? They're slapping five. Oh my God! I can't believe he's coming to Florida State. We got McKenzie Milton. So, to some degree, I think we were all like that, right? Like this guy was prolific at UCF, and we haven't had good quarterback play since Jameis left. So everybody's like, well, at least we know this guy can put up numbers and has won a lot of football games and has looked, somewhere north of competent, but under center. So, okay, we got a guy now. But I'll be honest, when I started going to spring practices, he was terrible. I mean, awful, guys. He wasn't close. And Jordan Travis was showing steady improvement. And I thought, well, good for Jordan. But, man, and I'm happy for Jordan. We need that. I mean, if he's going to end up being the guy, he's got to get better as a passer. But I was just shocked at how bad McKenzie Milton looked. And then I had to remind myself, that's quite a process and a lot of rust to shake off while you're also trying to learn a playbook. So the fact that by the time we get to the end of spring, and frankly, the last scrimmage all the way up to the spring game itself, McKenzie Milton took massive steps to get on an even playing field with Jordan Travis. And I don't mind, TJ. I'll tell you, I think McKenzie Milton's going to win the job. I think he'll win it in the fall. I think that we saw a huge jump here at the end of the spring. Some of those throws were big-time throws. Obviously, I've been told by a few people from UCF or connections to UCF's coaching staff directly in one case that he's a gamer, that when the lights come on, when it's game action, when it's real, he finds another gear. I kind of rolled my eyes at the time because everybody says that when they want something to work. But I think you saw it in the spring game. Like, as soon as it mattered, that kid made big throws, anticipatory throws. He looked much more comfortable within the offense. He got him out of bad plays or got rid of the ball. But I think at the end of the day, no matter who wins the job, and I'll tell you, I think it's going to be McKenzie Milton. I think we're going to need both quarterbacks. And I certainly know we're going to need Jordan Travis in some capacity because he's a playmaker. So both those guys are going to play, and I think we're a better team. Florida State's a better team if they both play. But McKenzie Milton, I think, will be the primary quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that would benefit us if we can still use Travis, maybe hopefully more effectively, but kind of like Florida did with Trask and Jones last year and be able to really, kind of rotate them. And Mullen's like a QB whisperer, but he always did it like weird freaking times. And it was always awkward. So hopefully Norvell does a better job of it. But we talked about it on Sunday as well. Like, I think Travis is a better thrower than Jones too. So I think that can really benefit us. All right. I'll ask this and I'll pass it back out to Richie, but a lot of guys out in this group, but if quarterback's the biggest concern around the team, offensive line is second. So where are your thoughts with what the offensive line will end up shaping like? Are you somewhat confident that we're going to show some improvement here? Or are you kind of just hands up, or what are your thoughts there?
Well, they'll be better than you saw in the spring because obviously they didn't have their full allotment and guys got banged up and other guys came back and had only been practicing for a short time. So I know they'll be better than they were in the spring, and that's a relief because they weren't real good. Listen, I think this offensive line is showing steady improvement, but they had so far to go. They were so bad that any incremental improvement seems to really stand out, right? You're like, oh, my God, we actually look fairly competent in that moment. but they're a long way from dominating. They're a long way from dictating terms and routinely winning the battle at the line of scrimmage and kind of imposing their will. We really aren't going to see that against the better teams. But I think they can win enough of the 50-50 games or the games where they're of equal talent. I think they've gotten competent. And I also think, again, there's an opportunity for them now that spring's over to maybe reach out and bring in a transfer tackle, which would help them a lot. They're better. And Coach Atkins, I like a lot. Watching him teach, watching him coach, it's a joy because you can really see the players take to it. But until they get better players, period, at that position, they can only get so good. So they got to raise the floor here by bringing in more elite talent. One of the ways you do that is obviously to find some consistency and start to win some games and show areas of progress so that recruits can see, okay, look, they got there, they're turning this thing around, they're moving, they're upwardly mobile. But I think that what we have to hope for is that they're good enough to beat. If you think about the ACC Atlantic, all right, Clemson is light years ahead of Florida State, but the rest of that division are games that if you're competent, if you're all pulling in the same direction, and if you're healthy, and that's a big thing you can never predict, you can beat those teams. You can beat Louisville and Wake Forest, obviously, and NC State. You can beat those teams, and you need to beat those teams because if you beat 5 teams, not named Clemson in the ACC, and then you have those 2 cupcake games on your schedule, that's the 7 wins. There it is. There are your 7 wins. God forbid you stumble into a win against Notre Dame or Miami or Florida or something like that. Then you have a great season. But yeah, I think the climb this year gets them to somewhere in the neighborhood of 6-6, 7-5. And while no Florida State fan, certainly longstanding Florida State fan, would say 7-5 is what we desire to be, you'll take it after seeing us hit rock bottom last year and where we were the year before that and the year before that and the year before that. Some signs that things are moving in the right direction, I think, would really geek a lot of the fan base because we've been bereft of hope, guys, around here. Usually second week into the season, your hands to the sky, just like, well, God damn it, another year has gone down by the train. So, I mean, I just think anything – that Wake game is going to be huge because you had the first game against Notre Dame, which will be underdogs in, and I think most people would pick Notre Dame in that game. If you lose that game, fine, and then you've got the tune-up or whatever it is after that. But the third week, I think, is the Wake Forest game, and if you win that game and the next thing you know, you're 2-1, feeling decent about yourself, that changes the complexion of the rest of the season. You lose that game, and I worry that guys who have been beaten down get a, here we go again sort of mentality. So I think it's a big game. I don't often circle the Wake game as the big one, but I am right now.
Yeah, and a lot of the tough games besides that Notre Dame do fall late in the year. Clemson, Miami, Florida, all kind of late. So you could really stack some confidence, stack some wins up early. Yeah. And then, when you get to the end of the year, maybe like you said, we should, as Florida State, and I'm not saying this team this year, but as Florida State, we should beat everybody in our division with the exception of Clemson. Like I'm okay, but that just should be the standard. And beating Clemson should really be the standard. But you know what I'm saying? Like kind of where we are
steps,
now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then if you do that and you win those 2 games, talk about, then you just need to luck up and upset North Carolina again or upset Miami, who could be without their starting quarterback, or who knows how Florida looks. Their defense couldn't stop anybody last year. They've got a new quarterback taking over. Who knows by the end of that year? Or the end of this year. So, obviously Clemson Notre Dame going to be really, really tough, but you could find wins other places. But yeah, if you lose that Wake one early, that snowball just seems to start probably going the wrong direction. You do get Syracuse, who's really, really bad this year. I mean, thankfully, but I mean, Louisville wasn't very good last year. So
right.
We've got to figure that out. Richie, I cut you off again. I told you to go on the text and then follow up.
Man, Jeff. So we talk quarterbacks in the offensive line, but the one defense, or I'll just say the whole unit, if there's one coach that has a hot seat going into this year, it's Adam Fuller. Like after last year, people wanted him gone like halfway through the season. I think it's the right move to probably keep him just because of the weird COVID year and all that stuff. But I was pleasantly surprised with the defense in the spring game. Outside of that first touchdown that Travis threw, you didn't see any busted coverages. All the big plays were just great throws and passes by Milton, and you had Malik McClain, you had Josh Burrell, you had Brian Robinson, just making plays, which is what we're used to at Florida State. What were your thoughts on the defense? Because I came away far more encouraged with that side of ball than I thought I would from someone just watching the spring game on his couch.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Listen, I've been critical at times of Adam Fuller. I did get a sense, and it was good to talk to Coach Fuller. That's a guy that doesn't shy away. He'll answer questions. He knows they were bad last year on defense. But I will say, if you look around, TJ just mentioned it, Florida couldn't get stops on defense last year. LSU at the beginning of the year gave up like 1,000 points in 3 games. I think it was a weird year to try to coach defense. Defense, triggering downhill, being very, very physical, hands-on approach. You're trying to install something that, obviously they haven't heard come from you. You haven't gotten to know your personnel. You miss all of spring. You're a first-year guy. Then your best players, the guys that you're going to build this defense around, Marvin Wilson, Corey Durden, those guys didn't play well. There's no other way to say it. You can't sugarcoat it. They didn't play well. And so early on, your 2 most dominant players up front that you thought you could build around didn't play well. You didn't have a pass rush to speak of. And I think things begin to spiral. You're trying to teach defense via Zoom. That's not going to work. You need to be full speed. You need to be now. It has to be sudden. And I think you learn that way. They really had to kind of walk on eggshells last year. Think about it. They had low numbers. You had opt-outs. You had kids who were not exactly happy with the situation. You had some injuries. And now if you ride them the way that usually defensive coaches do, and you get on guys and you're aggressively coaching them, who knows if they don't say peace? I mean, a lot of people might have just said no thanks. So I think they were trying to get in as many games as they possibly could to make as much money as they possibly could. I do look at that year as a year of 0. Now, it did cause all of us to say 2 fingers to my eyes, 2 fingers back to you, Adam. Yeah. We're going to need to see something. But already you see growth there. Those kids fought through blocks to make plays out on the perimeter. I thought the secondary looked better. I think Jermaine Johnson is going to provide a legitimate pass rush. It's the first guy in a long time that looks the part for us. By the way, that's an interesting kid. I had a good conversation with him about why he transferred from Georgia to Florida State. That guy on day 1 of spring practice, when he came walking out before they went into the indoor practice facility, before stepping out on the practice fields, I said, who the hell is that guy? He looks like he could have played in 2013. Because we have some guys now whose body types don't match up for what Florida State normally is. His does. And then I realized number 11 was the transfer from Georgia, and it makes sense that he could walk into any locker room and he looks the part, right? He could walk into Alabama's locker room, Clemson's locker room, and you wouldn't ask questions. He stood out, and he seems like a natural leader. He's a smart kid. He's contemplative. He's interesting. They've got some real leaders on this team. So they got a chance to be worlds better on defense. They have to be. They cannot be anything close to what we saw a year ago, which was really kind of non-existent.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about Jermaine Johnson, but let's be honest. People listening to this, they listen to every Florida State podcast. They're subscribed to 247 Warchi and all that stuff. We know that. What doesn't get enough love that I love about your show, Jeff, is the basketball team. So I want to talk about them a little bit. Man, yeah. I love the conductor Cameron, especially when you get into February and March. Nothing better. Obviously Raekwon Gray decides to, go pro, and I don't think anybody was surprised by that. Balsa surprised some people, but not many if you really followed along with what's going on. But I think this was more of a transition year than anything. And people, especially Florida State fans that are just casual watchers, they lose sight of that because they forget last year was supposed to be our year, right? So I'm very happy with the Sweet 16. Michigan was a better team. Nobody, we were going to beat them. We play them 10 times. We might win 2 of them, but next year we could have a loaded roster. And I keep checking my phone because there's a 5-star from IMG that could pop at any minute right now with Balsa leaving. Yeah. But I mean, just Leonard Hamilton, what he's done at Florida State is amazing. And we'll have a true point guard in Caleb Mills next year, which we did not have this past season. Mm-hmm. Just what are your expectations for Florida State's basketball team next year? Because I'm thinking Sweet 16 minimum again. Obviously, tournament, you never know. It gets crazy. But, I mean, a 4 seed at worst, right?
So here's if you say that again out loud and we all sit there and parse that, you realize just how far the program's come to where if they don't go to a Sweet 16, we're going to be pissed. Yeah. That's what he's done now. And, Coach Hamilton's one of my favorite people in the world, let alone one of my favorite coaches on the Florida State campus. But I would tell you that, man, he risked it all at a late stage of his career to get to where we are now, and that he went away from a winning formula. They were dominating with defense. He would recruit length. The games were ugly, but all people care about is winning. And so they would win 50-43, and we'd all kind of yawn. And the next thing you know, we beat Texas A&M in the NCAA tournament. We're on to the Sweet 16, and everybody gets excited. Well, he starts to go away from that, and then he swung and missed on a lot of high-profile, skilled basketball players. And I think they thought they were going to get some guys that they didn't get, and they ended up having to settle on some other guys. And so they went through this stretch where obviously he's losing games and they're not getting to the tournament. And people look around, and it's made all the more maddening at that time because Florida's having success and other programs that are football schools are having success, and people are getting upset. And at the last moment, he gets a yes from Jonathan Isaac, which really I think saved his career here at Florida State, because I think the administration was looking very carefully at maybe making a change. But then they thought, okay, well, we got this 5-star kid coming in Isaac, let's give him another chance. And they make the tournament, and then, you go on from there, and Bacon and Beasley and all these guys to right up to what we see now. And you bring up a good point. It's so devastating to realize that they didn't get their chance a year ago. But Coach Ham, when you ask him about it, will not wallow in it. I'm sure privately it bothers him to no end, mainly for the kids, because that was a really good team, and they were a really deep team. And I think they would have made a hell of a run. They had a chance to certainly be a Final Four team. This team was a little bit more flawed. It was another weird year because of COVID. But they didn't, one of the things you really saw stand out, you look at Baylor winning the national championship game, but even if looking at the Michigan game, you look at the backcourt and the ability of point guards, 2 guards to beat you off the bounce and create a look and knock down shots, the ability to get to the basket and kick out. Once MJ Walker got hurt, he stopped doing that. He just became a spot-up shooter. Even Scotty Barnes, who I love physically, was not prepared to be a point guard. I know we helped him out for his NBA career by giving him that opportunity, but he wasn't beating anybody off the dribble. If you can't create that kind of space and create shots for yourself, and teams don't have to respect that out on the perimeter, that's a problem. So hopefully by getting a true point guard in, and really, guys, basketball right now in college is all about what you get in the transfer market. Everybody that started for Baylor in that national championship team transferred in. Those were not guys that they went out and got. Those are guys that transferred in from somewhere else. So you're right to keep an eye on the ticker right now, because I have a feeling with Raekwon Gray deciding to go, obviously you find out about Balsa this week. I wasn't that surprised. A lot of people love his body type, the fact that he can stretch out and shoot. Maybe he's a stretch 4, maybe he's not. We'll see. But an NBA team will take a chance on him. You got to get a couple kids in here. It should be interesting to see. Ham's really good in that they've made connections. And Florida State, that's another area where this program has come so far. Go back eons ago into the 90s, early 90s. They had a great run. I used to go to those games and watch Bob Sura and Charlie Ward and all those guys, and Rodney Dobards and Doug Edwards. I loved it. It was amazing. And then there was the long, long drought. The reason I bring all that up is in those days we had real expectations. Then that went by the wayside. They were getting yeses from really top caliber players. Florida State now has their hand in the cookie jar on everybody. Like, you could be the number 1 recruit in the country the way Edwards was 2 years ago, and it comes down to us and one other team. He ends up going to Georgia. It's a relationship thing. But it's amazing. Like, you're talking about the best players that are considering Duke and Kentucky and UCLA and Kansas and North Carolina and all these schools. And then you look at that list these days, Florida State, Florida State, Florida State. It's amazing to be a part of that blue blood community, to where now people look at, obviously I know it's the new bloods, but they now all look at Florida State as a destination, a place you can go and go to the NBA, be seen, and win a lot of games.
Yeah. And to your point, so the 5-star I mentioned before this, Efton Reed, he plays IMG Academy. He's the number 23 player in the country, number 3 center, 5-star composite by 24/7. And he's the guy Florida State and Leonard Hamilton were on early, and they kind of backed off. Like, we have too many bigs. We don't need them. And then Balsa, says, hey, I'm going pro. And then Ham, what I'm thinking, makes the call and says, hey, the spot opened up. And now he's like, oh, all right, well, do I want to go to Florida State after they essentially said, we love you, but we don't have room? That's wild that Leonard Hamilton has this program at a point where he can tell a 5-star center, hold off. We'll let you know. Okay,
Yeah.
now we want you.
No.
And now he's considering it. Like, that's wild to me.
It's the Saban effect, right? Like, we don't have room for these blue chips.
Yeah. You're a 5-star receiver and we love you, but you're just not up to snuff with our other 5-star receivers. I'm going to need you to wait a while. Oh, look at this. One of them decided to leave early. Come on down. And you're not even offended. Yeah.
No big deal. I'm on my way, Coach.
Pitt and Virginia got to be like Pitt and Virginia, who are also in this final, and LSU. They'd be like, what the hell, man? This is like Bobby Bowden in the 90s. Like, he wasn't on this kid until the week before signing day. And now Bobby Bowden shows up and I got something to think about.
It's cool. And I got to imagine, Ham, when you talk with Ham, if you're in his presence, if you're across from him and you listen to him talk about building young men and making sure they get their degrees, all this stuff is very Bobby Bowden-esque, by the way. He's a father figure to these guys. He does care deeply. It's evident when you talk to them. You can see it. It's in his eyes. It's not bullshit. And so I think that's how that guy goes sweeping into a living room or talks to a parent. They know it's real, and he's proven it. He's shown it. Some of the best moments I've ever seen from Leonard Hamilton is you get him talking about a player. I remember one time he was talking about Derwin Kitchen and the plight that young man had to go through just to finish up at Florida State and get his degree. Ham is getting watery-eyed, man, talking about what that kid achieves. He really does believe in education and cares. But they're also winning games, so you get the best of both worlds because it's great to care about education. If you're losing 25 games a year, you can take that somewhere else. The fact is, we need people to win. He does both. Those kids do get their degrees. They come back and get their degrees. He follows up with them. They also excel on the basketball court, win a conference championship, finish in the top 4 each year of the ACC, go to the NCAA tournament, and routinely find themselves in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and I'm going to cut TG off, but just one more moment, then I'll get back to him. But one of my favorite moments from Florida State basketball happened a few years ago. Brian Angola, his mother flying into the game, and he had no idea, and he's in tears. And Hamilton had his fingerprints all over that.
Sure.
That's why he's probably my second favorite Florida State coach, regardless of sport, ever, behind Bobby Bowden, because of things like that, man. He truly cares.
He does. No, I tell people all the time. People ask me, what's this coach like? What's that coach like? When it gets to Coach Hamilton, I light up. I say, how much time do you have? The guy's great.
We've had Mike Martin Jr. on a couple of times. I got to go to a baseball game a few weeks ago. They've had some ups and downs, kind of really, really hot weekend where they blew the pants off of the in-state rivals, dropped a tough one on Tuesday night that they really should have won with all the errors. And things that they had. But, when they're good, they're really, really good. When they lose, a lot of times it's losing really close, so I'm not much for the moral victories, but they went on the road and played Louisville really, really tough. Quickly, I know we've kept you a while and we'll wrap up here in a minute, but like, what are your thoughts, expectations on what this baseball team could end up doing?
Well, they can really pitch, so you're going to always give them an opportunity. They've been an average team defensively the other night, notwithstanding that was an embarrassment in terms of picking up the ball. And, you see some moments where you roll your eyes, but they can really pitch. They've got a lot of arms. And I know the record isn't blowing anybody away, but they've played a really good schedule. The ACC is very good this year, and you're playing primarily an ACC schedule. And obviously you're going to have your ups and downs when that happens. I've said for years, guys, that I don't care. I mean, look, it's nice to have had all those years where you win 40-plus games, and it's something for the record books. But I really feel like there have been years where I thought I'd rather see a team that's closer to 500 because they're playing elite competition. And when you're playing elite competition, you're going to see great arm after great arm after great arm. And you may lose a series. You may get swept. You may go on a stretch where you lose 5 straight. And fans from outside will go up in arms if that happens, and they get frustrated. But I think at the end of the day, all that does is prepare you for the postseason now, where you've seen everything that anybody can throw at you. There's not going to be any better than that arm we saw in the middle of the year that's going to be a top 5 pick. There's nobody out of the bullpen than that kid we saw in the series against, and you name the team. Usually it's been Florida lately, but because we've seen these arms. And we've held our own. We went 500 against those teams. Or in Florida State's case, they're above 500 against these top 25 teams. Their run differential is plus big time against the best teams on their schedule. So I don't worry about the record at the end of the day, so long as it's not so bad that they don't make the postseason. They're going to make the postseason. I think this will be a tough team in any series that they play in the postseason because they will have seen great arms, great competition, and they can really pitch. The bats, they come and go, but they can pitch.
I'm going to ask you this, and then I'll let Richie finish up with whatever he's got. We had you on the Big Three roll-up a couple of years ago. This isn't what I'm going to ask, but we had you on the Big Three roll-up a couple of years ago, and really asked. We didn't go so deep into the like the X's and O's of Florida State. We talked more about like your history, getting into radio, and all that stuff, which was, I don't know, maybe a different interview than you usually do, but it was probably my favorite thing that I've ever heard of you. Like, well, I asked you about this. Besides that, like 2013 lead up to Clemson thing that you did that like gets played every year, like on YouTube and stuff. But it was cool to like, I mean, I enjoy your FSU takes. Everybody in the Seminole community does.
I don't know about everybody, TJ.
A lot of people, yeah, we take that back. A lot of people enjoy it, but I really enjoyed. So if you, I don't even remember when that was, but if you search Jeff Cameron and Big Three roll up, it comes up. We really went into like Jeff's history and getting into radio, what started you out in Tallahassee. And that was really, really cool to kind of hear that behind the scenes. I have to drive tomorrow. I'm probably going to listen to it because now that I think about it again, I'm like, man, that was really, really neat.
You're going to make me listen to it, TJ. I don't even remember what I said.
It was good. Whatever it was good. So we'll say that for another time. But my wrap up here is you talked about the Bucks. I know you're a Bucks fan. It was cool to see them win. A little bittersweet though, because I'm the biggest Jameis homer that there ever was, and would have obviously loved for him to be there. But totally off the wall. And I don't know how often you answer this, but give me your thoughts on Jameis in New Orleans and his career going forward. Because like I said, I'm the biggest homer ever, so I just need the good news and your take on it.
I wanted him to leave the division because I think very highly of him. And I am a diehard Bucks fan. Grew up down there going to games. I went to the old Sombrero with my dad and watched them lose all the time. And so it's exciting for me to get to see them win a second Super Bowl and, you know, to kind of be the belle of the ball. But it's interesting. I think we've learned a lot about Jameis Winston in the last few years. And not all of it is good. And I'm not talking about any off the field speculation or controversies or anything like that. I'm talking about the player. Jameis, and I know Jameis pretty well, and I know Aunt Nora, his father, really well. Jameis cares deeply, and you won't find somebody who works harder. And we've seen when Jameis is good, he's really good, like all world good, top 5 quarterback in the league good for stretches at a time. And when he's bad, he can be really bad. He can really force the issue and create problems for himself. But I think what we learned, and I have no way of gauging this now because I'm not in New Orleans covering him, and I don't talk to him as much as I once did. You know, the sense I got in Tampa was that he wasn't a great leader. He worked hard. He showed up. He was there before anybody else and was the last to leave. He certainly had his bright moments. You can't throw for over 5,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns in a season and suck. So obviously the top-end version of Jameis is productive. But I don't know that guys followed him into battle. I don't know that guys trusted him and believed in him. And some of that could have been where he lost the trust of the locker room with some immature antics early on, maybe. I don't know. I mean, these are grown-ass men providing for their families, 38 years old in some cases, 35 years old. Maybe it doesn't play when you're, eating a W. I mean, things like that. I don't know if that always resonated with guys.
Yeah.
But I think he learned a lot. He certainly, I don't know if you saw the interview recently, TJ, where he got choked up talking about him and Drew Brees and what Drew Brees meant to him. Jameis was doing an interview, and the person asked him a question about what did it mean for Drew Brees at the end of that game to come over to him and put his arm around him, almost like he was passing the torch and really talk to him. And he got choked up because he talked about how much he admired Drew Brees and that he learned a lot from Drew Brees. My guess is he didn't learn a lot of football from Drew Brees. He already knows that. He already knows football. He's got to dial it back some, and he's got Sean Payton, who's a great offensive mind. He knows the football. I think he learned how to lead. I think he learned perhaps how to relate and connect to his guys. I hope he did, but I also hope it leads him to say Denver after this next year or something like that, because I don't want to see the best version of Jameis in this division, because that version is an all-pro. That version is going to beat my team a lot. But I always wish Jameis well. I think he's a little misunderstood. I think he's a lot misunderstood. And I also think he's one of the best players that I've ever seen in person. He's always been nothing but professional and kind. He was really nice one time to my oldest son. He's never forgotten it. We were in the locker room for a baseball game, an exhibition game when the Yankees and Knowles played down in Tampa at Legends Field. And I tell that story sometimes, but that's who he is, man. He talks to kids for days. He goes around and tries to make the last guy on the bench feel good about himself. When he was with the baseball team at FSU, all the bullpen catchers, guys that would never get in the game, he'd sit with them on the bus. He'd hang out with them. Like, he is that dude. So I don't know. I just think he had to mature a little bit in a professional setting, in an NFL locker room, and maybe he'll get guys to come along for the ride. That's the sense I get.
Yeah, we had Mead on, and when I asked him what Jameis was like, he just said he was the best. Like, in everything he did, like, I don't have anything else to say. He was the best, from
TJ. If you ask any coach, and you ask any of his teammates here, they can't stop talking about how great he was.
Yeah,
that says a lot.
Yeah. So sure. two quick things, Jeff. First of all, that I saw the interview you were talking about when Jameis was talking about Drew Brees and what that meant to him. So my wife is from New Orleans, and she's a diehard Saints fan. We go to the Bucs Saints and Raymond James every year, and I showed her that interview, and she was tearing up. She's like, I'm ready for him to be my quarterback now after hating it. And she's a Bama fan. We won't go there. But that was something. And I'm with you. I hope he has a great year. I hope the Saints go 14-2 with 2 losses to the Bucs, and then we beat them again in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to talk about real quick, and I'm a little upset about this. So I have the SiriusXM app, and I try to find the Beyond the Tips on demand, and it's never on there. And I know that's your golf show on SiriusXM. And so
I don't know why it's not on there. Let me pull. I have the SiriusXM app too. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Let's see if we can. Yeah, by the way, there you go. There's my screen.
I love it.
I've heard that we might be able to wear the creamsicles this year.
Yeah, I think we're going to break out the creamsicles this year.
And while you're looking that up for me, I do want to ask about Florida State great, who I know gets on your nerves a little bit sometimes, Brooks Koepka. But one of the coolest things, I don't know if you know this, I'm sure you do because you're plugged in with everyone at Florida State. But when we had Meat on the podcast, it was I think there was a golf tournament going on, and I asked about Brooks Koepka. He's like, let me tell you something about Brooks Koepka. He used to come out to practice and take batting practice and would just rip balls all over the field. Did you know Brooks had it like that with a baseball bat?
My man, I found it. It's right there.
All right. I need to get that because I was looking for it today. I wanted to hear you. I want to hear you and Trey Jones recap of the Masters. It wasn't a great finish, but there's a little drama. But man, Brooks in the batting cages too.
Yeah, we're talking to Jerry Haas. We talked to him last night. He's great. The Haas family has done a ton in golf. Jerry Haas is the head coach at Wake Forest. He's Will Zalatoris' coach. So it was really kind of fun to get.
Happy Gilmore's caddy. All right.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, I did know Brooks could play. Brooks is an athlete, man, and he's a really good athlete. I didn't know that he'd come to the batting cages and just yoke, but it doesn't surprise me, man. It's eye-hand coordination. He's a big, strong guy. He's athletic, comes from an athletic family. Yeah, he'll tell you about his baseball prowess too. So yeah.
He's not,
yes, he will. He's not bashful. So that's not the part that bothers me at times about Brooks. There are other things he does where I'm like, come on, Brooks. But listen, he's a Knoll, and I root for him, and he's obviously, the man's won 4 majors, so he's an all-time great. But yeah, I didn't know that he'd go out to the cages. That's kind of cool. The ancillary benefit, right, of being an elite athlete on Florida State's campus is like, if you fancy yourself anything, basketball, maybe you're a football player who wanted to play basketball player who wanted to play whatever. All those coaches are like, come on, let's go. You get to go out there with those guys all the time, man. That's got to be so cool.
Random story. We're not going to talk about it. Just look it up. There was a homeless guy in Southern California in LA that somehow worked his way into USC's dorm rooms, got to the training table, got issued a practice jersey, and a security personnel caught him fielding punts during a practice. So just look that up. Just a random thought. Yeah, just look at like a random homeless guy ended up fielding punts at USC's practice, and the security guy's like, I know number 87, and he's 6'4". This guy's 5'10". That's not right.
Dude, that's dedication to the process, man. All in. He was going to make that.
He got a team issued jersey. So again, we're not going to go into that because we've taken up enough of your time. But thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out, man. It's always so much fun when we get you on here and can chat with you. But thanks so much. Tell us about, I think most people listening and watching know, but we've had a lot of people on here tonight, a lot of comments, a lot of different things, a lot of excitement. But where can people find your radio show, your golf show, just everything you do, man? Where can they find it?
SiriusXM PGA Tour channel, since Richie brought that up most recently, is on your SiriusXM dial there. It's 92 or 208. Both those channels, you can find that on demand there. Use the app, whatever it might be. That's Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock when we go live. That's me and Trey Jones, the head golf coach at Florida State. Get a lot of guests. We talk PGA Tour. We talk college golf as well. Fun show to do. Occasionally, I'll fill in on ESPNU. That's channel 84 on SiriusXM. Not frequently. I do some guest hosting there, here and there, or as an interview or a guest or something along those lines. And then my everyday job, the everyday job that I've been doing for over 20 years now, is 3 to 6 p.m., 97.9 ESPN Tallahassee. You can stream that from the website, or you can find it. We put it up on Apple Podcasts. We put it up really wherever you get podcasts. So it's also on YouTube. If you just type in ESPN Tallahassee, you'll see the YouTube feed, and you can watch us do the show if that was your cup of tea. So lots of ways to access, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to say that. But moreover, I enjoyed the conversation. This was great.
Yeah, man, we really appreciate your time. Like I said, when I think about the guys that tell the story of Florida State, man, like I think about Gene on game days and you the rest of the week. So
it's a flattering to be mentioned alongside that guy. I'll say that.
Yeah, so we're excited to get up there Labor Day weekend.
So let's have a beer.
I was gonna say gut box on me, and Richie will buy the alcohol. So it'll be fun.
Be
Thanks,
good,
buddy.
guys.
Have a good one.
Jeff, really appreciate it.
Be good, everybody. Sure.
Thanks, Jeff Cameron, ESPN Tallahassee. He is awesome. I didn't tell him this interview was going to be about an hour. I didn't think it'd be about an hour.
What did you tell him, like 10, 15 minutes?
You always hook him with I don't even think I told him a time. I think because we probably did that with the Big 3 roll up. So he probably knew that I was full of crap. I think we usually say something like, hey man, we'll take up, 15, 20 minutes of your time or whatever. Richie and I had talked about it. I had told my wife that this was going to be it's going to be 20, 30 minutes.
I told my wife the same.
when he gets rolling though, he's excellent. He's absolutely fantastic. He's one of the best interviews we've ever had. He talks for a living, so it's not shocking that he's a great interview, but he's really, really fantastic. But man,
you don't make it 20 plus years in one market without being outstanding at what you do. So like Jeff, he's a legend. I remember listening to him when I was in college, 2006 to 2010, when he was on Fox Sports Radio back then. Now he's on to the mothership. And that was super cool for me because I listened to Jeff Cameron every day, 3 to 6. We'd pull it up, and to be able to interview him was pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, I listened to and was on his interview when he was on the Big 3 roll up. I don't know where you were. I'm actually the one that recorded it when he was on with Trey. I think he had to do daytime.
It was like 10 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah,
I'm like, damn it, Trey, I need a night one because I can't do 10
daytime. So I did that one, and I never get tired of hearing him talk. He's got great, obviously, FSU insight, being so close with the program for so long, but then just talking to him and kicking it is a lot of fun too. So we will be back on Sunday night for our regularly scheduled program sometime between 7 and 8 o'clock. May have a guest, may not, but have some fun things in store the next couple of weeks. Trying to stay as relevant for you guys as we can. Thank you. We had a lot of live viewers tonight, so thank you if you were tuned in live to watch this. I know that Jeff's the one that brought him in, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it and will stay. We have a good time. We do a show every Sunday night. If this is your first time watching on YouTube, Periscope, Twitter now, and Facebook Live, we do a show for about 45 minutes, an hour every Sunday night. We haven't missed one yet since we started in August. So it's been a lot of fun. Every once in a while, we'll have an interview like this. We'll pop up and be able to do it. So Jeff had time tonight, It was kind of relevant with FSU spring wrapping up, so we decided to get him on, and I'm glad we did. Had a great time. Richie, do you have any shout outs or any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, nothing. Shout out Jeff Cameron, man. Like I said, always been a fan. For him to take an hour out of his night right when he got home after doing a 3-hour radio show to hop on and do an hour with us. That's awesome. Like Jeff Cameron, Florida State legend.
Awesome. Yeah, no, Jeff was good. He gets my shout out as well. So shout out to Jeff. Check out his radio show, man. He's great. Also, check out, search. I'll even find out exactly what it is. But if you YouTube Jeff Cameron, FSU Clemson, the coolest little montage. It's the first one that comes up. Florida State versus Clemson 2013 featuring Jeff Cameron. The coolest montage ever comes up. It's 4 minutes, and it's Jeff talking about what Florida State would need to do to win that game. And then it's intertwined with highlights of exactly what Jeff said happened.
DJ, I'll do you one better. In lieu of a song for this episode, just play the montage.
We'll play that montage. Go watch it. It's incredible. You'll want to see it lined up with the highlights.
Talking about. Yep.
But I'll play it as we get out of here, because that's the coolest thing I've ever heard Jeff do on radio. So, all right, and that's all we got. We'll see you guys on Sunday night. Thanks for hanging out. Go Noles.